you everyone so much for having me, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm just going to present a short case study on some social distancing flowers that we installed last week, and we've had a really amazing reaction to these, and it's also sort of on reflection allowed us to do allowed us to sort of embrace a little bit of learning as well, which we wanted to share. So in regards to the recovery framework, the areas that this relates to include managing social distancing, storytelling, managing footfall, and there's a number of other elements that come up around consistent signage, managing hotspots, and having and embracing an inclusive approach. So this next slide shows you a little bit of what happened. Basically, about 2 weeks ago now, I was having a chat with Jeremy at City Dressing about buying some just of the standard social distancing stickers, and I was like, oh, I'm not sure that they're just pretty enough for Leamington. Can you make me some flowers? I think they might fit in with the DNA of the town a bit more. We're a spa town, it's all flowers and gardens, and I just think people might enjoy them more. So he came up with these great social distancing flowers, and we installed them last Thursday as a bit of a test run, and I'll talk through a little bit of that in a minute, because that was really where a lot of our learning came from. But as you can see from social media, within about 24 hours, it went a bit crazy. It got shared nationally, actually internationally. And as I say, it prompted us to reflect on some of the intentional things that we learned from this, but also the unintentional things. So really, the first thing I just wanted to talk about is just really what Kathy's talking about, which is spending some time observing how places are currently working, gathering points, conflict areas. You can see from my photo here, I went in and spent 3 or 4 hours just looking at Leamington on that quite busy day, which was Thursday before the public holiday. And I could see people were queuing everywhere. Like there was queues on the outside of the pavement, the inside of the pavement, and places where I thought I would put flowers, I realized I couldn't, because it has to be done in collaboration with the businesses. I could see that certain business types and needs needed to be reflected in different ways. And equally, obviously, this question around community sentiment. I observed a lot of different interactions with people, and I could see that that was sort of playing into my decision making anyway at the time. And obviously, I also realised that this deployment of our flowers, if you like, and other interventions were going to have to fit in with a wider strategy of physical interventions as well as communications too. My point number 3 there is really just what we were talking about earlier, which is that we don't need to throw our business values or brand values, place values out the window when we're thinking about this. The need to trust, to foster local trust and loyalty is more important than ever. So having interventions that people embrace, and also that they share themselves, I think has made me realise how important this is. So we've really had this organic sharing of the message about social distancing in our town centre. And hopefully that means people will respect it a little bit more, because as you can see from Kathy's slides, there's some huge challenges ahead of us in terms of how we manage and communicate this. Now, on the back of this, schools started emailing me and asking if they could have some of our flowers, because they identified that they thought the flowers would reduce stress and anxiety in their students. So we put them in touch with Jeremy, and we've had 2 local primary schools and a high school now buy these flowers. And we realised a sort of a flow on from that was just this idea of consistency of messaging between the school environment and the town centre environment, really with parents feeding back to us that their kids actually want to stand on their flowers. Some of the flowers have got butterflies on them. So this added interest and fun means that parents are telling us that actually it's easier for even to get them to get their kids to queue on top of them and so on. That led me to really just thinking about our future interventions in terms of how we make participation irresistible, really, and ideally a little bit joyful and magical. I was speaking to someone yesterday about them. They challenged me to think of the idea of queuing in terms of how Disney manages it at a theme park. And I thought, wow, that's amazing, because actually our theme parks are really good at making queuing interesting, actually. Obviously, we've got a lot to think about in terms of social distancing too, but it's just all good food for thought. Our places and nature are also providing me with wonderful inspiration. Natural systems teach us a lot about flexibility and adaptation and collaboration. another element of this is the fact that we're sort of here embracing the idea of trying low risk and often temporary installations or experiments, and then just sort of focusing on what works really. There's a lot of underlying vulnerability in our communities at the moment, so we think that we need to come up with ways to take the temperature of community and business sentiment quite quickly. We've got quite a strong social media presence in this town, and so we can kind of get that feedback quite quickly. But these quick feedback loops, I think, are going to be really important to us as we put in place interventions and then quite quickly see whether they're working or just quite frankly not. You know, the flowers were something I could put down on the pavement. We focused on pedestrian crossings, gathering areas, and the entrance to the shopping centre for now, and we're deploying them in partnership with businesses in terms of how we manage queuing. But equally, if it doesn't work, we can pull them up quite easy. Now, just, are we going to change slides? Is it going to do it? Let's see. Hold on. Yeah, here we are. So emerging questions. For me, just wanted to reflect on, oops, it woke up, sorry. Let me just go back to that slide. It's a bit of a delay here for me. Right, I'm not going to push any more buttons. So emerging questions for me as we go forward really around, I just think it's so important we share learning and inspiration. These photos here are from New Zealand. I'm seeing loads of photos like Kathy on Twitter and stuff with ideas. We're compiling a compendium for sort of our businesses with photos of ideas of how they can manage social distancing within their businesses, just to inspire different thinking. We're playing with the idea of expanding space and time. Space is at a real premium clearly at the moment. I had a gallery contact me the other day and say that they were up for offering a bit of extra queuing space in their gallery for the cafe next door. Also thinking about vacant units and this on and offline blend as well of online space and obviously physical space. Expanding time, what I'm talking about there is thinking of some of our interventions, not in terms of 7 days fixed, but thinking of how we might be able to break a day into, or break ideas into days or time slots for certain uses, sectors, users, road closures that are on some days, not others, etc. We're playing with a lot of ideas at the moment. This idea of social dialogue, I observed that people's tolerance of infractions of their personal space was quite variable over the time I spent looking, over the few hours I spent in town. And I think we need to come up with a way of us sort of checking in with each other, just checking that we're okay with things and making sure that that the communications don't, you know, that they stay friendly and kind. I think that addition to the framework of kindness is going to be really important. We've always thought of our town centre as a community centre, so we're thinking about how we support the community that supports our businesses. So that could be staff or even people that lose their jobs. How do we keep them connected and involved? Listening to the unheard and our moral compass, these are things that have always sort of guided me, but as we mess around with public spaces, for example, accessibility for all users is going to be something we have to think about. And this last point was actually something I picked up from Matt, the executive director, Matt, on LinkedIn. He talked about releasing the shackles of placemaking, and I must admit, like, I've sort of felt a bit energized from this in a way, because Leamington's obviously quite the whole town's a conservation area, and in some ways we've got a little bit of license to maybe try a few things that in the past that perhaps weren't possible. This last slide I'm not going to talk to, I'm just going to go on to Q&A in a second, but I've found this really hard over the last 6 weeks. We are working hard and we're dealing with a lot of ambiguity. And about 2 weeks ago, I sort of came up with this little motto for myself to just try and come back to, and I just thought I'd share it because I've shared it with a few people locally. This idea about being okay with imperfect and building adaptive capacity into some of our ideas so that they can transition on or just evolve, working out what DNA of our places and of our organisations we need to preserve and what actually we need to let go to make room for new ideas. Try lots, fail fast, and pay attention to what resonates is kind of what I've been trying to encourage people that I'm working with to just not throw ideas off the table before they've been looked at. I didn't come up with this myself. That little link at the bottom is a 4-minute video that is of a leadership coach that I've worked with in America who defines the work she does from an idea of called biomimicry, but I'd highly recommend it. And really just that we continue to share these ideas about how we're continuing to inspire each other and support each other, because you know, I know that for all the bid practitioners out there, we're flying by the seat of our pants at the moment, and we need to just support each other as much as we can. So thank you.